Ladies and gentlemen, this is an Off the Record podcast with your guest host, Sergey. I'm here with Ron Benegbi, who has grown up in a small business family, immigrated to Canada back in the 70s, and right now is the CEO of Uplinq, the first global credit assessment platform for small business lenders. Ron, pleasure to have you. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Sergey. Excited to be here.
Likewise. I want to start with the story of your father getting a loan to open a company. What happened there? How this whole thing came up?
Yeah, I mean, it's directly relevant to what I'm doing today in as related to Uplinq. But just as a quick synopsis, I'm an immigrant. We came to Canada in the early '70s. We were poor. We had no money. My dad was baking bread at night to put food on the table. And in 1973, he went to Royal Bank and he asked him for a small business loan. To which the banker replied, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, Mr. Benegbi,
Sure.
We have specific lending criteria here at the bank as related to small business. Unfortunately, you don't fit those criteria. However, I believe in people, and here's $5,000. And my dad was able to take the $5,000 in 1973, start a small business, which then turned into a medium-sized business. And interestingly enough, that kind of set the stage for my mom a year later, who got her real estate license and started knocking on people's doors in Toronto in the winter of '74. And we know that's not a pleasant experience. And saying, hey,
Yeah.
do you want to sell your house? And out of that, built a small business real estate services company out of that. So small business has always been a part of my backbone. And really that $5,000 that that my dad got in 1973, really became the springboard for our family's lives here in Canada. So I've grown up personally in a small business family. My professional successes and my failures have come as a small business owner. So obviously the small business landscape is something that's both, personally and professionally relevant to me.
Ron, which country you came from?
We came from Israel.
Israel, right? It's so much colder here.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's a lot colder here.
And it's such a hustle to do what your dad and your mom did in the 70s, because let's just not forget, you come back at 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. back then and it's over. There's no internet. You can't message anybody. So it's
Yeah.
you have to be outside of the building by and large to do anything.
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's really the epitome of what we call the grind. I mean, so my dad, started his business, but his business was like he went to a certain location every day. But my mom was just all over the place. And, to your point, it was just hustle. And, I think those are the biggest things I took from my parents is, it's just that grind and hustle and doing the dirty work, so to speak, that enabled them to provide my sister and I with a very comfortable lifestyle here in Canada. And I think I took a lot of those characteristics and brought them over to my entrepreneurial journey because, I've always just been a hustler and grinder. And even today, I do all of that, still do all of that dirty work, so to speak, in order to just push that business forward. And I think that's, like I said, something that I took from my parents and forever grateful for them for doing that for our family.
Right. Oh, now, how Uplinq came up to be? I believe you had a conversation with, was it a stranger?
Well, that was my fourth startup. I had a conversation in a downtown coffee shop, actually Le Gourmand, if you know it, on Spadina. They make some very good chocolate chip cookies, if you like chocolate chip cookies. But that aside, no, and that really was a spawn to my fourth startup, which was in an adjacent space. But Uplinq was an interesting story because in early 21, I had left my previous startup and I was really looking for a way to help small business lenders better understand the creditworthiness and risk profiles of their small business loan applicants, um, and turn most of the no's into yeses, because mostly it's a no. And the reason for
Yeah.
that is small business has always been underserved. They've always been asked for 3 years financials, audited preferably, but non-audited fine. And the bank has overlaid a credit score. And when you look at that sort of legacy approach, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work for today's small business. And given what we've been through in the last couple of years with COVID and the shuttering of all of these small businesses and the migration to all of these micro SMEs who don't have 3 years financials and they don't have established credit scores, I was looking for a solution, and honestly, I didn't have one. It's not like I had an epiphany. And what I have learned in business is, it's good to be lucky. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And I
Mhm.
was just fortunate enough to meet my co-founder, who had an established track record in the space for a long time, and he had built a technology that we've simply repurposed
Right.
into a modern day fintech, which has now enabled us to go to market as Uplinq. And the response has been, candidly, it's been overwhelmingly positive. So
Mhm.
that's really how Uplinq became about. There's
Right.
a lot more granular detail that I'll spare you, but that's kind of the high level.
And what's Ron? And by the way, finding a good co-founder is a tremendously difficult thing, which we'll touch on a little bit later. But what do you feel like how big the opportunity is to serve the underbanked people, underbanked businesses?
Wow. I mean, the opportunity, if you look at small business lending as a whole, the market on a yearly basis is north of $27 trillion. That doesn't include China. You can start backing out what percentage is underbanked, underserved. Look, the wherever you get to, it's a big number. And that's why it's so exciting, because we're here to help anyone who will accept our help. And it's sort of a global approach. So we've already got customers lined up in India, in Africa, in the Middle
Mm.
East, not just in North America, which is table stakes. And we really have the ability, as one of our partners said really well, his name is Ishmael, I just call him Ish for short.
Mm.
you know, the reason I'm partnering with Uplinq is because together we have the ability to impact the lives of millions of families in underserved communities. And so it's a big market, one that we can't service obviously alone. And that's why we're excited to go full steam ahead into it.
But you start with Canada, or you start with North America first, and then you move on to further markets outside of that.
Well, in terms of how you build a business, you always have initially a market focus. Ours is North America, clearly, just because we're here.
Yeah.
But we've received so much inbound. And our business is unique in the sense that to launch a customer in India doesn't take any more effort if they're already there than it does a customer in North America. So most of these international sort of customers and partnerships I've referenced have actually come inbound to us. So, we've been
Mm.
fortunate that the little bit of PR and marketing that we've done in the first few months this side of 2022 has really resulted in a tremendous amount of inbound interest from others.
Right. I want to talk a little bit about scaling. At what point in Uplink you looked at it and you saw a clear need that we need to scale the business?
Well, I that's an interesting word. I'm not sure I'd use that word in the context of where we are as a company today. I mean, to me, that word is you're kind of an established business. You've got product market fit. You've clearly got revenues, and now you're looking to kind of go to the next level. And for us, we're still in that earlier stage.
Right.
So I will tell you that, for me, look, I try not to think about these kinds of, to me, these are all like buzzwords at the end of the day. I'm just trying to build a business in a very pragmatic, thoughtful way. And I've always learned that, if you do things the right way, if you dot your I's, cross the T's, you bring in people, you treat them with kindness and with empathy, and you put them in the right roles so that they can be successful. Money, which is really all tied when people talk scaling and growth and all that, money is a byproduct of all of that. So that's always how I've looked at building a business and company is, let's just do the right things, do it well. And if we do, then, the success will follow naturally.
So you don't look, Ron, as some other founders that they look at quite aggressive milestones. Let's achieve this first phase, let's achieve this second phase, and we need to keep growing faster because we're going to be eaten by some other guys across the street. You don't look at it necessarily this way.
Well, we have milestones for our business, of course, and we have aggressive milestones, but I'm not of the mindset of grow at any expense. I'm an old school operator, even though I look very young. Thank you for recognizing that, by the way. I appreciate the compliment. And for me, it's like, yeah, we're building a company, but we're trying to build a profitable company. So I'm not here to just raise money and then, hire 20 people and then burn cash and be in the same place 6 months from now. So we're here to, build a product, do it right, hire in a very thoughtful, pragmatic way, but also give ourselves enough of a cash runway while always having business milestones that we need to hit, of course, but not at the expense of, I hear some of these founders,
right,
and it's just like, it's just not sustainable. It's not sustainable what they do, like grow at any expense. And then, and then we get into an economy like we're getting into right now. The markets are where they are right now. They're going to be out of cash in a few months, and good luck trying to raise. So I kind of take a different approach in trying.
Well, I was going to say, your relationship with patients is different.
I guess it's not that I'm not in a rush. Believe me, I have a sense of urgency every moment of the day, but that has to be balanced against a thoughtful, pragmatic way to build a business. To just go and throw money at something in order to just grow, but growing without profit and growing without it making business sense, that's, to me, is a recipe for failure. And more so than not, these companies don't succeed. And I can start naming a bunch of examples, but I think the examples I'm going to name, but that's just not the way I think about business. And and again, maybe it is the older school operator in me, because remember, my first startup, we didn't raise money. Like we had no money. We just grinded like crazy. We went out, we got a customer. We made sure that customer was profitable. We, paid ourselves a little bit, then hired a few people, went out, got another customer, and just repeated that process over 12 years. That was now today's startup doesn't have 12 years, but that's how I grew up. And to me, it's like, why are you building a company without thinking about running it in a very responsible way? And I see a lot of these founders today, and I just don't agree with their approach. But again, it's my opinion. It's kind of the background I've grown up in.
Right, but it's also, Ron, and you totally. We spoke with so many founders that look at, or a lot of founders look at well, here's where I could exit. I want to exit in X number of years, or I want to quickly get rid, like sell the company and do something else. But your approach is fundamentally different.
Oh, it's 100% different. Like when I hear that, I just like I laugh. Who builds a company? Who starts a company and thinks about an exit? Like, I mean, to me, you don't start a company. I don't start a company to make money. I start a company because the company serves a business purpose. It solves a business problem. And like I said, if you do things the right way in terms of how you build it, how you run it, how you bring in people, how you treat people, money is a byproduct of all that. So I don't think of things like that. I don't think about exits. I don't think about the word I hate the most in the startup world is unicorn. I can't tell you how many startups founders, oh, we're building a unicorn. Really?
Yeah.
That's why you started this business, to build a unicorn? That's the motivation behind
Yeah.
starting your business. So look, to each his own. For me, that doesn't resonate. It doesn't work. If it works for other founders, okay, great, good on you. But to me, that's not the way to build a business. And most startups fail. I think Stanford did a very intensive study on this several years ago, and they looked at 35,000 different startups over 5 years. And look, one statistic, 92% of all startups fail. So the odds are against us. So that's just kind of my DNA, and what's worked and hasn't worked for me too, because I've had failures too. But that's just kind of the DNA I'm cut out of.
Absolutely. Ron, what's your relationship or your opinion on taking external capital, working with VCs? Like, what do you, how do you look at that?
I'm very favorable to it. I mean, with Uplinq, look, it's without external capital, we wouldn't be here. So I'm not opposed to taking external capital,
Bootstrapping, right? Necessarily.
bootstrapping at a certain time, and then bringing in an external capital to help you get to a certain milestone. Not opposed to that at all. I'm very much in favor of that. All I'm saying is I like to do it in what I think is a very thoughtful way. And the next time we raise money, we'll hit a certain milestone, and we're not just raising money for the sake of hiring people. Like, we've raised enough money where I know a number of founders who would hire probably 15 people based on the amount of money we've raised. And we've got 3 openings right now, and we're probably going to take our time to fill those openings just because we want to fill it with the right people. So even though we've got money, we're still running as a lean startup, and we're still running as a bootstrap startup. So I think there's a balance there, and that's just kind of, like I said, it's my DNA. It's the cloth to which I'm cut from.
Well, and why is this approach, Ron, where you're not hiring too fast, which is, as a matter of fact, one of the pitfalls of running a business where people hire too fast and then you don't have a structure, then this whole thing falls apart. But where you have right now more capital that you could deploy, what are the reasons for taking it a little bit slower and not going as fast as you potentially could have?
I think we have a team that's as it is today, where we can get to where we need to get to from a product perspective with the team we have. We do have some openings, which we're trying to fill. It's not like we're purposely not trying to fill. We have them, we're trying to fill. We've just been deliberate with that. But we don't need to overhire, because we can get to where we need to get to from a product perspective with the team we have, plus the few hires that we're looking to do. And I'm very, very concerned about cash and cash runway. That's the number one reason all small businesses fail, regardless whether the VC funded or not and tacked or not. And especially now with the markets being what they are, with the economy turning, we have to hold on to every penny we have until we can't anymore. So that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, there's a lot of discipline in this approach. It reminds me of the CEO of Drift. There's a chatbot company back in Boston. And in early days, David Cancel had a podcast. And I still remember him saying, listen, this pen, why did we buy this pen? you should be letting me know if you buy this pen, because I am a CEO, but I want to know every single dollar that we are spending on
I love
something,
it.
even for that kind of thing.
I love it. I love it. Actually, I've never heard that, and that's a great story. It's funny. It was a few months ago. One of our employees, bought a subscription on something, and we have corporate credit cards and expense management cards and all that stuff. Like
Yeah.
all startups do. And he inadvertently made a mistake. He had bought a U.S. subscription on a Canadian card, but we have a U.S. card. He just made a mistake, right? And I said to him, "Oh, well, can you just go and change it?" And he goes, "Oh, what's the difference? It's like, it's like $12 the purchase." I said, "Well, we incur a forex charge, and we don't have to. Like, I know if we had to, fine. If we didn't have a U.S. card, fine." And it's only like whatever, a dollar, whatever. But it's the mentality is, why would we spend money when we don't have to? We have a US card. We could have bought the subscription on the US card, and we should be buying it going forward. So I love that story about the Drift CEO. I think that's fantastic. And from all I can tell, is they're a very successful company. So
Yeah.
no wonder. Sounds like he's a good CEO.
Yeah, that's a great example. It's not about necessarily that dollar or $2 of forex exchange. It's that precedent. Oh, if we're going to let it slip here, then there's going to be something there, and then it's the
Exactly.
mindset, it's the culture where
It's the culture.
it's the culture that's been built, and then because right now
That's
you're
right.
in a baseline, you have that
That's right.
fundamental base. Then you bring more people. They're like, oh, we can actually use Canadian card with US. That's okay, and then it slowly drifts.
You said it perfectly. The word is culture. It's about setting the tone and building the right culture, the right way to think about business, the right way to respect the dollar. Remember, I'm an immigrant. So I remember when I got my first bank account, and this was a long time ago. I had a Royal bank account. I had a little manual register. There's no internet. And I would go to the branch every month. Can you please print me off my balance? And I would say, oh, I made like 17 cents interest this month. Great. So now I added that 17 cents manually, and now I have $20.17, whatever. But that's the mindset.
Yep.
It's a grinding mindset. It's respect every dollar mindset. And a lot of the founders that I see today, I mean, they're just not cut from that cloth. And it is what it is. That's the cloth I'm cut from.
Ron, I want to talk about hiring. You mentioned it a little bit. When you are looking for people, when you are expanding your team, you're looking for not co-founder, but maybe like a VPs or directors. What are you looking for, and how do you find those people? Any maybe hiring aha moments or tactics that over the years that you found that help you find the right person as much as you can before starting to work with them?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm an expert at that, to be honest with you. I mean, I've made a lot of hiring mistakes over the years, and I think we all have, right? It's par
Yeah.
for course. You start a company, you hire, you do your due diligence. For me, I always just try to, regardless of where the individual comes from, what source, whether it comes from an ad you place, whether it comes from your network, you message somebody in Slack, and you got some response, or you've hired an executive recruiter. Is how does that person translate to what we're trying to do here? And that word culture is overused, but it's really interesting. I actually saw the most interesting story on LinkedIn the other day, and I don't know if you saw it, Sergey, but
Yeah.
this CEO was talking about, he went out and he hired this senior person. He went through this process, and the person started, and 4 days later, like 4 days into this person's job, he fired the person. He saw the person just behaving terribly to the employees, and it was just something he couldn't see throughout all the interviews, throughout all the reference checks, the ones that were given, plus all the back channeling. And he had to see that person in the environment, and he decided to act. And, that's the one thing I will tell you I've probably been very good at, because I've made a lot of hiring mistakes, and I'm not sure I'm qualified to, this is how you should hire, but I've always been good at acting. Meaning, if I see something's not right and something needs to be corrected, I own up to something if I've made a mistake. Because a lot of, again, founders, a lot of executives, by acting, it's an acknowledgement that they've made a mistake. It's acknowledgement of failure. But I've always, so that's what I would tell you. I've always been good at acting. I'll always taken ownership of failures that I've had or misses that I've had, because you have a lot of misses. And in order to try to improve the company going forward. So I don't know if that answers.
Yeah, I have not heard that story, but it's a really brilliant one. It reminds me of a founder that I've spoken with before, and what she said was really exceptional. She said, especially early on when you are in building your business, those people are 10xers. Those people they have so much contribution to the company that if somebody is not a perfect fit, then the impact on the company and the growth of the company is so much higher than later on, that you, especially early on, you have to be so careful with actually making sure that those people, those fundamental people who are building the culture, they're building everything, are perfect fit.
No, she's right. She's 100% right. The impact, both positive and negative, it's greater felt earlier on, like when you're 5 employees versus when you're 500 employees. Of course, that stands to reason. But she's 100% correct. So if anything, on that sort of based on that thesis, you should be more careful earlier on, because as you grow, the misses don't have the impact they do in the early days. And so she's 100% correct.
Ron, anything you do specifically for the culture fit, or it's a standard interview, let's see what's going to happen, and then once they start, then you're going to see if it's going to work out or not. But like in terms of finding the culture fit, anything particular that
I'd love to tell you that I have a magic wand, but I don't. I try to ask, for myself, and it's usually more in one interview. And first of all, I don't interview people. Let's be clear, that's not my style. I don't come to an interview with a checklist. I come and I just have a conversation. I said, like, this is how I'm a founder. I just want to talk to you. I want you to talk to me. I don't have a set of prescribed questions. Let's just I'll lead, but let's kind of go with the flow. And I try and get a sense of who that individual is. And I try to ask questions that help me understand, will this individual fit into what we're trying to build here in terms of, the working protocols, or the work ethic, the value ethics, things like that. And of course, we all do our due diligence, both references, front end and back channeling. But, just like that guy who the CEO fired the guy after 4 days, you never know until you know. And sometimes that's like you've already hired the person. So totally. I wish I could tell you look, if somebody came up with a magic wand, like if I came up with a company that said, Sergey, I can 100% guarantee that you will not hire anybody that doesn't work out, and this is why. Well, believe me, you'd buy that service and I'd be a quadrillionaire. But last time I checked, there isn't a product out there that does that. So
people are complicated. That's
sure.
That's one of the takeaways.
All people are complicated. Whether you're a founder or whether your employee number, 900, we're all unique. We're all special, right? We're all special.
True. Ron, what's your philosophy around failures? You've had a fair share of, how do you think about it?
So how do I think about it?
Yeah, what's your
I
philosophy
try not
around
to dwell
failures?
on it. I try not to dwell on it, but I've tried to take the lessons I've learned and grow from that. And I think, look, a lot of people say failures, you learn more from failures than from successes. I'm not sure I agree with that. I think you learn from both, right? You learn from everything. And like every day, you learn. And I will tell you, Uplink is a very complex product. It requires venture capital. It requires unique individuals to kind of build it. It requires a certain message. 10 years ago, and again, I know how young I look. Thank you for, I appreciate you keep saying that. That helps me. Thank you, Sergey. But 10 years ago, I'm not sure I could have been the CEO of Uplinq. And so I just try to take everything I've learned along the way, both successes and failures, and apply them to what I'm doing today. So, and by the way, I don't see failures as a bad thing. There are some CEOs I know who they hide from that. I've had a failure, I've had two failures. Like I don't see it as a bad thing. And I know a number of, let's say, VCs actually compliment me, because if you look at my LinkedIn, I actually put it right on top of my profile, like right at the top, at the header, not in my, 5 startups, 4-time tech founder, 2 exits, but 1 flop. And that was a flop. Boy, did I kill that company. Not perfect. So, I think you got to own it. You got to be comfortable in your own skin, and apply everything you've learned, both good and bad, to what you're doing today and going forward.
How do you turn around, or if you were to think about Ron, about one of your big failures or something that was maybe took a little bit of time to comprehend, what was your process of turning that around, maybe thinking, asking questions, or just going through that?
Well, the failure, it didn't turn around. It flopped. It crashed and burned, right? So again, what I try to do is apply everything I've learned to date to where I am today. So how do I think the question is, so how do you apply that into, turning a negative into a positive? So I know today I'm a lot more patient than I used to be. And, it's interesting, as a CEO of Uplinq, and my wife has come out and said, like, who are you? You're like a different person. Like, I'm not as reactive as I used to be, or when I wasn't a CEO. I'm much more measured in my response, and understand that there are things every day that come up that I see, and there's a few today, believe me, and they're eating at me right now as I'm talking to you, believe me. And what I try to, again, take from my experiences was, okay, take a breath, don't react. How are we going to solve this? And that's just based on what I've learned over the years, and how to date with Uplinq, I've been able to turn a lot of this around, because 13 months ago, we were actually a PowerPoint deck. So we have come a long way in 13 months. We've probably, you could argue that most companies take 3 years to get to where we've gotten to, and we've done it in just over a year. But it's tough, and it's tough every single day. It's tough, and some days I wish I wasn't doing it, I'll be honest. But then, that goes away, and then, the hurrah comes back, and, I've got my energy back. So
back to why starting the company in the first place. If you're just doing an exit, then you're going to be probably in a really dark place.
I don't even think about that. I'm like doing it really at the end of the day to solve a business problem. I know it's a very serious problem. And actually, the problem that we're solving actually helps people, it helps small business owners, which need so much help. Small business is the backbone not of Canada or the US economy, but of the global economy. So, all of that keeps me going because I'll be honest, there are a number of days, and today might, be one of them because I am dealing with things that are not making me happy today.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I get through it and we just move forward.
Ron, what's the best part of working with your co-founder, Pat?
Oh, he's brilliant. I've never, every time he speaks, I learn something. And he is probably the smartest individual, like the smartest intellect I've ever come across, not just worked with.
Mhm.
So when he talks about the business and why we're helping people, and I just sit there and listen. My God, it's like every time I listen to him talk, every time I learn something, every single time. And I've got nothing but like the greatest amount of respect for his mind, for what he's accomplished. So it's a pleasure to always have that opportunity to learn. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ron, two more questions, one or two sentence answers, something really short. What would you do if your company went bankrupt?
yeah, so I'd probably just work with startups pro bono and just try to mentor and advise and help them. It's something that I actually get a lot of personal satisfaction out of it. I call it like intrinsic motivation. And I think I've already talked about that kind of when I retire, however that happens, that's something I want to do.
What new beliefs, behaviors, or habits that you've adopted, let's say within 5 years, last 5 years, that positively impacted your life?
Yeah, so I think I've talked about them a little bit. Really, like I would tell you, I'm a little bit more measured, a little bit less reactive. I would say I'm probably more mature as a business person. Not that I was immature, but again, just having these different experiences has allowed me to become more mature, to grow up as a professional, to look at things from the lens of others, not just my own. And ultimately, I would tell you maybe the biggest thing is, everybody talks about culture. And I think for me, it comes down to empathy, like just really trying to be empathetic and working with the highest amount of integrity. And I can assure you that a lot of founders I have come across over the years, um, they talk a good game, but they don't actually
Yeah.
execute against that. So those are the
That's
things I would call out. I hope I took more than 2 sentences. I
No,
apologize.
that's good. That's good. It always does. It always these questions. This is a Tim Ferriss style question. Usually takes a little bit longer. Ron, thank you for being on the show. This was a pleasure. This was awesome. This is another off the record episode for you guys. I hope you enjoyed this. You can catch all the latest on our LinkedIn and on Apple and Spotify. And we'll be back soon.